Diamond TV, television reinvented.
You're watching Bizweek with me, Winston Mavor, and today we will be looking at the Zambia Labor Force Survey that was conducted by the Central Statistics Office in 2017. My guest on the program is Felix Mwenge, who is a research fellow, human development from the Zambia Institute for Policy Analysis and Research. I hope I got that one right this time around.
Yes.
Okay, so just to kickstart this conversation, the Labor Force Survey did indicate that there was indeed the gender employment gap. There were more men in employment than women. Your thoughts?
Well, you are right. Yeah. But as usual, as I like doing most of the time when I'm here, is it okay if I just give an overview of labor force employment issues in Zambia? So basically, right now, unemployment stands at 12.6%. What's unemployment? It's basically the proportion of the population, the labor force, the people who are able to do work, who are not working for one or two reasons here and there, because they can't find a job. So that stands at 12%, meaning that 88% of the Zambian population are actually working. We'll talk about that because some people tend to dispute those numbers. So the 2017 Labor Force Survey, which you talk about, is actually uses what I can say an improved formula methodology in terms of how we used to measure these numbers previously. So in this survey now we have what we call the potential labor force. So the potential labor force are people who are not working now. They are not even looking for work, but they're actually ready to work.
They're employable.
They're employable. That's the right term. So if we were to count people who are also employable but not employed and not yet looking for work, actually unemployment shoots up to about 41%. And that's a more realistic number that people want to work with. But the point is that in both of those statistics, there are fewer women in employment at each time. Exactly.
Okay, so now how do we close? How do we bridge this gender gap?
For us to be able to do this, the first thing is we need to understand that there's a background to what we see in the labor force. Exactly. So today, if you see fewer women employed compared to men, before we can actually criticize the statistic and that kind of stuff, we need to understand the background that is building up to that. Remember, to get a job, certain jobs, you need a specified type of education. You need a qualification. You need experience, skills here and there. So what you find is that if from the beginning you didn't get good education or you didn't have a chance at education, you definitely are going to have fewer chances of finding employment. So what you find in Zambia is that from the low levels, primary school, secondary out there, you have so many young girls enrolling into school, but actually not all of them get to finish. So you find that at each levels of the education sector, primary, secondary, tertiary, you have more males compared to females. This simply means that this situation here is going to be transferred to the labor force survey, to the labor force state when you come. So you're still going to find these gender imbalances in terms of employment. Quickly, to how do you break this gap? You should address the roots of the problem. So I think this is where we call for, when it comes to the education system, can we allow as many girls as enroll in school to actually stay in school? We are basically, I'm an advocate of what we call reverse discrimination. Where women and girls were denied an opportunity to remain in school. Can we do everything that we can for them to remain in school? Can we remove barriers like financial barriers? Can we also address our cultural issues that tend to think that women are less able with education and that kind of stuff? So grant women an equal chance to an education like we've done for the men. And then give them also a chance to participate in everything that prepares somebody for work. That way we will begin to reverse these gender imbalances in the labor force.
Okay, 0974001218 is the number that you simply have to call to be able to participate in this particular conversation that we're having today that is focusing on labor issues in the Zambian setup. Now, Mr. Mwangi, you did, mention something very crucial, about investing more in the education and skills training, in girls to ensure that there is an equal access to employment opportunities. Now, the survey also indicates that, the informal sector, did record. Okay, there I've got a question that I would really love you to clarify.
Yeah.
It did record that the informal sector, recorded lesser numbers when it comes to people in employment compared to the formal sector. But when you go to places like, Soweto City Market and you do a statistic, check, of course, not really verified, or maybe in the most, using the most conventional methods, as you mentioned. But, one would think otherwise. Shouldn't the informal sector have more people, working there, though not formal, than the formal sector?
Well, in terms of there have been some changes, but I think when a change happens, we are also interested in the margin and the size of the change. So, the informal sector used to account for 85% of employment in the economy. Now it accounts for 84%. Okay, so you can see the margin is just a 1 percentage point change. So what I can rightly say right now is that the informal sector is still a big problem. It employs the majority. So when you look at labor statistics we are talking about, actually, now it's 84%. Well, I mean, what's 85%? What's 84%? It's almost like, insignificant. The change is insignificant. So we are basically saying that the issue of informal sector is still big. Many of the people that are working in Zambia are actually in the informal sector. And one thing you need to know about the informal sector is that, this is a large pool of people. When you can't find jobs in the formal sector, you have nothing else to do. But you still have the energy, you still have the time to involve in an activity. So some come up with a small business. Others get employed by, unregistered people. And there you start doing 1 or 2 activities. Sometimes you'll be ready to work for 10 hours, there's only work for 5 hours. So this is a sector that has attracted so many people because there's nowhere else to go. Unfortunately, there's low productivity there. Unfortunately, the wages
we've got
are
Mr.
also...
John from Kanyama who
Okay,
is
good.
on the line. And
Sure.
you're through to Biz Week, Mr. John. What is your question or contribution? And please make it brief.
Hello.
You're through to Biz Week, Mr. John. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you, sir?
Very much okay. What is your question and contribution? And kindly keep it brief.
Okay. Sorry, sir. It's a program na epezera pakati ndepe nafika paso kusokera kumshiki.
Okay.
And my help is Vale, what are they doing? What are they going to help us in terms of contract forms? Signing whereby we have about 49 in one shift. So we are to sign a contract. So to sign a contract, wanabowa kambati ma contract anemusaina alliance pamene pamwamba padzale mbapo general work, and yet ndisema operators. Okay. So wale babatitapo brand wakaleta mafomu kuliyo, there is no way company bantu bali maybe 40 bonsi bankale ma general workers.
Okay, Mr. John, ziko mkwambili. That is a very, very, good question and practical. I love the fact that it is very practical. And, I was actually reserving this for a little bit later in the program, where you start bringing in, the issue of regulation, okay, that governs the Zambia labor environment. Your thoughts on that particular question?
Well, it's
I mean, is it fair if you have a skill, you have a qualification to just be classified as general?
I think what you need to understand is when you are classified as general, what does it mean? Actually, so it simply means, remember, you and I have discussed the minimum wage here on this forum.
Yeah.
And the people who qualify for a minimum wage are general workers. Okay? So if you, Wilson, if you are a technician and I classify you as a general worker, It means based on the current minimum wage, I can justify paying you just around the minimum wage. When as a technician, you can get probably 3-4 times the minimum wage. So that probably is just a move to avoid paying actual wages for what people are qualified for. But in terms of what is the labor office doing, I'm not a labor officer, but what I can advise the caller is to run to labor office. I mean, the officers are there. You present this case, they'll be able to handle it.
You know, there is a classic case again. You know, over the weekend we had a gentleman that came to Diamond TV and tendered in a complaint saying, you know, they had gone to the labor office, their case, you know, was, presided over by a proper officer as described by the law. But the proper officer dismissed the law and they advised the employee to go to the Industrial Relations Court. And the Industrial Relations Court took on the case and ruled in the favor of the employee, not once but twice. So the person was also expressing concerns to say, just how credible are these proper officers? And in your view, do you think labor law administration in this country is at its best?
I think it is, with a few reservations.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've interacted with colleagues from the Ministry of Labour, and I can say that they are trying their best, but sometimes also, like recently, remember when we were discussing the issues of the minimum wage, I think there's enforcement is a challenge most of the times because the economy is growing big, and sometimes the capacity of the labour office is just limited. So, you know, they were indicated recently that they've acquired more vehicles, you know, to be able to patrol. So they are doing what they can, but probably they need a bit more capacity. The economy is growing, the needs are expanding, so the office also needs to expand in terms of human capacity and even the knowledge, because look at this issue, people are becoming very complicated in terms of trying to avoid the laws.
Okay, so now when you talk about, you see, again I'll revert to the caller, when you talk about the maybe weak points in the law or the so-called lacunas that give, you know, employers. Okay, Mr. Brian from within Lusaka is actually on the line.
Okay, sure.
You are through to Beeswick, Mr. Brian. What is your question and contribution? And kindly keep it brief.
Okay. I would like to ask...
Good evening, Mr. Brian.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. What is your question and contribution? And kindly keep it brief.
Okay. I want to find out, well, of course we have good labor laws in this country, but I think little is being done for the Zambians who are employed by foreign investors. And I think little is being done to help the employees, and I feel much is needed to be done. As it is, things are really bad. I think even the minimum wage, which was introduced last year, I think it has not been followed by everyone. There is a big problem in this country. And I feel like the employee is being neglected by government officials and by all those that are responsible with his responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brian, over there. Again, sentiments, you know, coming in from... the Zambians out there, they feel that, you know, more must be done to strengthen the law, you know, to make it more employee-centric. But of course, one belief I have is that, you know, the law in its entirety, you know, is not supposed to be pro-anybody. The law is supposed to be, you know, for everybody. You know, it is supposed to be a neutral place where both employer and employee meet. But coming to my question, and of course agreeing, you know, somewhat with Brian's thoughts, is the issue of strengthening the laws that we currently have. Do you think that there are some lacunas that still need to be addressed to ensure that the legal framework that governs the labor environment in this country is strengthened?
There's a number actually, but see, before I can point out any, I would like to clarify this, that you know, in the labor market, there's what we call a tripartite arrangement. So you have the workers, you have the employers, and then you have the government itself. Okay, so these three. So a government is a regulator, you know, stands in between to ensure that the employers and the employees have harmony for productivity in the economy, meaning that the laws that should be passed should not kill employers at the expense of employees. Also, employees should not be given such rights as make it counterproductive for the firms. So every time we begin to complain, are the laws strong? Are they weak? there's a need to strike a balance. And this is what we talk about with the colleagues in government to say, look, there could be lacunas here and there, but as much as you try to adjust things, just ensure that you don't squeeze the firms out of business trying to please an employee, because you need the firms for there to be employment. So Brian is right. There's quite a few issues that probably need tightening, but there's just need to strike a balance between the two.
Okay, so the agricultural sector, interestingly, when you look at employment by industry, did record the highest numbers, agriculture, fisheries. But particularly, I took an interest in the agriculture sector, which for some time now has been recording the highest levels of poverty. So this is a sector that has a huge employment opportunity, yet has the highest rate of poverty. Your thoughts?
You see, I'm liking your levels of analysis. You're becoming very good at these issues. Well, like you've put it, I can't argue against that. The potential in the agriculture sector is immense, but the incomes are very low. The first problem is that in this country, agriculture is not taken as a business.
I love that.
The people that are involved in agriculture do not see agriculture as something from which they can earn a living, from which they can take their children to school. Because most of the farmers are subsistence. They are growing.
We've got James from Kawambwa that is calling us right now. You are through to Beeswick, James. Good evening.
Hello?
Hello, good evening, James. You're through to Beeswick.
Yes, sir.
What is your question and contribution? And please make it very brief.
Iyo ni dandawulo eyo. Sizama ne bazatitandizira balebba.
Okay. Okay, we seem to have lost James over there.
James.
Okay.
I like it that it's mostly youths calling in. So there's the youth unemployment problem, obviously. Also.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going forward to agriculture. So the issue is we don't consider agriculture as a business. Okay? Today, if you went to rural Zambia and asked a young man like you and myself to say, what do you do for a living? They'll tell you nothing. I just have a small field. So agriculture for young people is something that they are just doing before they can find a main activity to do, a main economic activity to do.
When it has the potential to be the main source of income.
Exactly. And beyond the youths, the ones who are in there, it's just, hand to mouth, like they say. Just grow maize today, sell, eat, and forget about it.
Okay.
But
I had a conversation with the Minister of Labour on that because, you see, whatever government does obviously has to be within the confines of a specific regulation.
Yes.
And, there was indication from the Minister of Labour that... okay, we've got Mr. Kasonde from within Lusaka on the line. So before I continue on that thought, you're through to Biswick, Mr. Kasonde.
Yes, sir.
What is your question and contribution? Very brief.
Hello?
You are through to Biswick, Mr. Kasonde.
Yes, sir.
Good. What is your question and contribution real quickly?
Yes, sir. My contribution is about the government. They are always talking about the casualization. But casualization is still going on. And the labor laws are not followed by this foreign investment.
Okay.
Like now, last year, they introduced the minimum wage, but they are not following that. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So issues of casualization there. But before we get to the very pertinent issue that I would love us to tackle, before we actually get to wind up, unfortunately, I did have a conversation with the Ministry of Labour, and they did indicate that there is a draft of a minimum wage that will be regulating, or that is supposed to be, handed over, in the agriculture sector. Do you think that would change the income outlook? Would it be really adhered to, looking at all these farmers? I know that it's quite a complex sector.
Let me tell you, and the reason why there would be a special minimum wage for agriculture sector is because they can't pay the current one because it's too high. Okay, so usually farmer groups and all, they approach Ministry of Labour to say, looking at the incomes in agriculture, we don't think we can pay up there. So we need our own minimum wage, and it's usually lower than the current minimum wage. But
I mean, do you think it's fair? Because I did a tour of, Makuchi Farm Block, and believe me, I saw some great farms over there with, proper properties. Believe me, not even what you see, not even the vehicles that you find parked at Zipa or Diamond TV. Serious vehicles over there, a chopper parked on the farm. Do those people really don't have the capacity to pay?
That's a difficult question for me to answer. I would need to look at the books and their numbers for me to determine capacity to pay. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. But what we know is that generally in agriculture, incomes are low. And also, this sector is seasonal. You need to remember that. This is why I wanted to address that issue of the casualization. And
Okay,
stuff.
in less than a minute,
Exactly.
just address the casualization issue. Before we close
Casualization
this show.
issue needs a lot of understanding, because within the law there are provisions. There's certain classifications of work which is not casualization. If you are a seasonal worker at a farm, that's not casualization, because farm work is seasonal. In the tourism sector, certain types of jobs which only happen at a certain time of the season are not casual work. So it's very clear. Unfortunately for this one, the employees and also the employers have failed to understand the distinction. So casualization is when I give you as a casual worker for a job which requires you to work permanently. You get the point? You need to work full time, then I employ you for casual. But for a work that only happens 3 months in a year, you can work for 3 months, I let go of you, another 3 months in the next year. It's not casualization. But that's not to say the law is being obeyed by everyone there. So I think it's still a call for Ministry of Labour. I think there's need, we've engaged that people need to step up reinforcement of these laws.
Okay, due to the interest of time, Mr. Felix, we have to close the program. And as usual, thank you for coming through to Biswick and joining us to discuss this pertinent issue of labour matters that is currently of essence, not only to the growth and development of the economy, but also to the enrichment and development of human beings that are the integral part of any economy. And emanating from this conversation is the issue of investing in the girl child, especially in education and skills training, to ensure that the gender discrepancy in terms of balance when it comes to equal employment opportunity is bridged. And of course, Mr. Felix has indeed clarified some of the few issues that you, the general public, have indeed brought on board. We will try as much as we can to ensure that we create another platform to bring this gentleman back to clarify quite a number of issues that we have. Thank you for participating on today's episode of Bisweek. The name is Winston Mavoro. Have a lovely night.